What I think is interesting about Nirvana is that people generally feel differently about Kurt Cobain depending on what generation they come from, which is really quite interesting, and I might dig into the differences in the ways that people from different generations consume and critique music. Nirvana is undoubtedly a Gen X band, the oldest being around the same age as Kurt himself, and the youngest being around 13 to 14 years old when he died. They got to see the rise and fall of Nirvana and of grunge itself, as carried on the shoulders of this unwilling, tortured icon. They knew Kurt when he was at his freshest, his brightest, and they also watched as he visibly fell apart as the years went by. They were the ones who were affected by the change when grunge broke. Then there are the millennials, sweet, disregarded millennials. I'm like right smack in the middle of the millennial generation, and I was just a little bit too young at the time to really understand what was going on with Kurt Cobain, and my baby boomer parents definitely would not have acknowledged it at that point. Boomers would take a little extra time to warm up to Nirvana, but many of them did eventually come around. Correct me if I'm wrong, boomers, I know you will. But a little bit later, when I started getting into music myself, right around the turn of the century as a little preteen hippie girl, Nirvana struck my soul in ways that I just was not expecting. And even though it was less than 10 years later, it still felt like ages ago. And at first, people around my age saw Kurt Cobain in the same light as Hendrix or Joplin or Morrison, with the same kind of untouchable mystique. When You Know You're Right came out, the lead single from the Black Album, the ultimate Nirvana compilation record, that angsty young millennials like me ate right up. Critics thought the album was too short. It should have been more thorough. Some thought it would have been better to keep it in the archives. Others thought it was only correct to release Kurt's last creative gasp to the world before he'd had enough. And what a beautiful, sad song. The lyrics in this one are pure poetry. It speaks to how alone he felt. It's like he tried with everything in him in the only way he knew how to make a connection, but he still felt like he failed. To millennials, You Know You're Right was iconic. It was something from Nirvana that belonged to us, that Gen X could not claim for their own. And it brought our generation into the conversation when it came to grunge and what would later evolve into post-grunge, emo, garage rock, and indie. You Know You're Right helped push along that transition in culture, just as Nirvana had 10 years earlier when they were the biggest band in the world.